I am Miss Glow, and welcome to the Rock Island Library's summer art program, Watercolor Your World. There are going to be 6 online classes. Each one is going to focus on one specific color. We're going to take a look at a few famous artists who have used that color in their artwork, and we're also going to look at some library books if you want to know more about the artist or the artwork. Each of you has received supplies, and the supplies, by the way, they were provided by the Rock Island Art Guild. The program, of course, is the Rock Island Library program, so be sure you thank your librarian when you come to the library for this program. But the supplies were provided by the Rock Island Art Guild, and each of you have a folder, and these were donated by the Rock Island Arsenal Federal Credit Union, and that was nice of them. It contains 6 sheets of watercolor paper that are marked. There's more than 6, but these are marked specifically for the class. I'm going to pull one of these out here. Each of them is marked with a number at the top. This one happens to say number 3 and the word top. Very important that you don't have it this way when the top is this way, because the paintings are different sizes and different orientations. Orientation means the way that it's turned. If it's turned like this, it's called a landscape. If it's like this, it's called the portrait. So always have the top at the top. So you have 6 of those sheets that are marked. They also have some lines, which is called a grid, and this is to help you decide the proportion of what you're drawing and also the placement of it. You don't have to use it. Some kids may want to try that, especially if you're a bit older. You might be more familiar with this. But if you don't want to, erase it, get it out of the way. You don't have to use it. The pictures that we're going to be working from, like I said, are different sizes and different orientations. This is class number 1. There are a few extra pieces of watercolor paper in there for you to use it for whatever you want to do. The things we're going to be working on are in a plastic sleeve, and I did that on purpose, and I would suggest you leave them in the plastic sleeve because you're working with watercolor. And if you spill water on these, it's going to ruin your picture, and there aren't any extras, so you need to take care of this. So please leave them in here. They're marked for each week. These are the first 3. There's a second sheet in the back. When we get to class number 4, you can pull that out and put it in the front. And on the back are the color pieces so that you have something to work from. I wish they were larger. It's very expensive to print color, so I enlarged them as much as I could to get them on one sheet. If it's a problem, I've put the titles on here. You can have a parent or someone help you find that title, and you probably can find the picture and enlarge it right on your computer screen. That's what I do sometimes if I need to see some more detail. Also on the inside of your folder, I have put a color wheel. Now mine is a little bit more elaborate because I couldn't find the one that I used for yours. So I printed up this one night, and I will refer to it now and then because we'll be talking about complementary colors and primary colors and secondary colors, and this way you have a reference that you can use all the time. The color that we're starting with today happens to be a primary color. There are 3 of those. Maybe you've learned that in school, maybe not, but red, yellow, blue are primary colors. You can't make those colors. You have to buy them in terms of paint, but then you can use them to make all kinds of other colors of paint. Then you have an art can. Many Pringles were eaten. We were willing to sacrifice, so many Pringles were eaten. They've been covered with file folder material, some recycled stuff. Jazz it up, make it yours, do something fun and funky with this. Watercolor it, or markers or crayons or whatever you want to do. The things that you have inside of it are what you need for the classes. There is a thing of paint, Prang paints, pretty good quality, student grade. A brush, an eraser, a pencil sharpener, and a white crayon. We're going to be using a white crayon for something called wax resist. You need to provide and have it ready a container of water today, some paper towels or tissues, and your own crayons, because we'll be using some crayons for some of this wax resist. So I think we're going to get started here. And as I mentioned, we're going to be working with the color red today. And I want to play a couple lines from an old song. I don't know if you recognize it, but it's kind of fun, and it introduces the color. The singer is Bing Crosby. You might have to ask your parents or grandparents or somebody who's familiar with Bing, but he was very popular at one time. Put my sign down. Color. If you want to hear the rest, you can find it on YouTube. Have an adult help you find that song. There's a lot of versions of it that you can listen to. Robins are really common in this area. In fact, when I was leaving the house, there must be one that has a nest somewhere in my yard. I don't know where it is, but they were very upset that I was walking down the sidewalk and they were peeping at me, and I looked behind me and it had gotten a worm out of the ground and so forth. So there are a lot of robins, especially this time of year, and they are nesting. There was an artist, I'm going to start out with the first artist today. There was an artist named John James Audubon who set out to document. That means he wanted to paint as many different bird species as he could. This is my littlest book about him. There's a lot of good information in here. He did this at a time, it was the early 1800s, had to stop and think, early 1800s, before there were cameras. I know cameras were invented a lot earlier than I realized, but there weren't cameras around where people could take pictures of birds, and there were people who wanted to know about bird species and how they migrated and what their eggs looked like and so forth. So he set out to document as many birds as he could. So here is his copy of a copy of the American robin that he created. I believe it's a detail. His birds were life-size in a lot of the paintings, so this is just a small portion. That's what's meant by showing a detail of it. And as you can see on that, the red robin isn't exactly red. The red robin is more like orange robin, but if you're going to sing that, I think it's easier to sing red robin than it is orange robin. So I don't know how it got the name, but I bet you can find out in a book how it got that name. But there are birds that are very red, some in this area, like the American cardinal. The male cardinal is very bright red. The female is kind of a dowdy gray. The guy bird gets all the beautiful feathers. So he painted that around the early 1800s as well. There are also a lot of flowers that are colors that you would find in your paint box. This, I suppose, is supposed to be a rose. It's not a bright red like in your paint box, but it has a lot of variations, some yellows. It has some pinks, and if you know about mixing colors, you know that you can make pink by adding white and red together. There was a famous artist named Georgia O'Keefe, and she's probably my very favorite artist. There's a series of books about, I don't see that one, but there's a series of Mike Venezia books about famous artists, and I happen to have the Picasso one here. There's also one about Georgia O'Keefe, but it looks like this. If you're looking for the book, you look for that color binding and you will find it. She was famous for painting flowers, and she said, I paint them large so people will notice. And she painted all colors of flowers. This one is very pretty. It's not red, but she used red for red amaryllis. And her flowers are realistic looking, just like John James Audubon birds were realistic looking. Some styles of painting are not. Some are called abstract, but both of those people painted realistically. Many other artists use the color red. There are several. Toulouse-Lautrec, I think, is one who favored it. I think Renoir used a lot of red. But the one that I'm going to focus on today, because I liked the work and it's kid-friendly, that means that just about any age of kid, whether you're a little kid or a grown-up kid, can paint something by Picasso. Here is one of those Mike Venezia books all about Picasso. If you haven't seen these before, I own every one of them at home. I love them because there's some great little, Mike does cartoons and things, and it gets your interest on the information about the artist. Picasso's father was an art teacher, and it shows Picasso as a baby sitting in the high chair. And I guess he did start drawing at a very early age. So the focus artist today and the artwork we're going to be using is something that Picasso painted. Before we get into Picasso, I forgot to show you this great book. It is called A Splash of Red. It's an artist I was not familiar with. His name, I think he may have passed away. I'm not sure. I should have looked that up. But his name was Horace Pippin, and he liked to use just a little bit of red in his paintings. So if you check out this book, you can find out more about him. I wouldn't be surprised if the illustrations in this book are done in watercolor. There's a picture of Horace. But watercolors are often used by illustrators for books. Illustrators are the people who create the pictures. Okay, back to Picasso. And I hope that you have your painting things ready, because when I start doing that, you might want to paint along with me or draw along with me. The nice thing is, I think you will have a link to this so you can go back and watch it later and do this at your leisure. You don't have to do it right the minute that you see this for the first time, so you can look at that.